Welcome to 180 Contracts Quarter 3 Lunch and Learn. We are discussing personal brand protection. Now, for those of you who don't know me, and for those of you who do, let me quickly introduce myself. And we're going to get started with our lunch and learn. I am Chayla Jackson, the CEO and founder of 180 Contracts, an attorney drafted, attorney approved contract template company providing small businesses, freelancers, and entrepreneurs contracts that are the next best thing to hiring a lawyer without breaking the bank. You can learn more about what we offer at 180contracts.com. And if you're watching this, but you didn't sign up to be live in the room for our lunch and learn, you can register for the next one at 180contracts.com. So let's talk personal brand protection. First and foremost, understand that your business has a brand, but so do you. Your brand is not just your logo, it's not just your name, your colors, but your brand is also your reputation. Your brand also includes your values. Now, look, for those of you who have never tuned into a lunch and learn, this is not a webinar. This is not where this is just technical training. This is a lunch and learn. So pull up, munch, let me know what you're chewing on in the chat so I know what you're eating and chewing on for this lunch hour as we learn. Relax, take a load off and just tune in. So when we talk about your brand, your reputation, it's not just the reputation of your business, but you yourself, your personal reputation, how you carry yourself, not just how you hold yourself out to the public, but how they perceive you as well. And we know that our personal brand is very important and powerful because some of us for our business, our personal brand is tied to our business brand. People work with our business because they know us, they know the value that we bring, but they also know the quality of our character. And so for our Quarter 3 lunch and learn, when I sat down and said Quarter 3 is going to be personal brand protection, I had no idea that we would start seeing how personal brand protection actually impacted businesses in Quarter 3. We saw earlier in the summer how the CEO of Astronomer and the chief people officer got caught up in their personal life at the Coldplay concert and how that trickled over into business, but also into them losing their position. Your personal brand is not just the image that you put for the public, it also includes how you live your life and what's exposed. And so, how do we protect it in a contract? What do we do about that? We see in real time this week what happened with Jimmy Kimmel after his comments about Charlie Kirk's assassination. And so, in real time, we are seeing personal brands having impact on businesses. But the question is it protected? The question is your business protected and your personal brand? How do we do that in a contract? And what does that look like? So, first and foremost, you have to ask the question: is your personal brand an asset or a liability to your business? Again, this is not the curated image because in this day and age, everyone has a cell phone. You can go live quickly. You can be exposed easily. And so your personal brand is not just your image you portray and project, but even how you live your personal life, your values, what you say, what you do. Is it an asset or a liability to your business? It sounds like we're talking about character, but also personality. So is it an asset or liability to your business? You want to know that because if if you have a messy life, hopefully you don't if you're coming in 180 contracts. But if you have a messy life, if there are areas that literally are a liability to your business, then in your contracts, you're going to want to be proactive in putting protections to make sure that your personal brand doesn't impact the bottom line of your business through a contract or someone terminating a contract. Now, the other question that you have to ask is the people or the person or the business that you want to work with or that you're already working with, is their personal brand an asset or liability to your business? Not theirs, but yours. Now, I know we're talking about contracts, but the reason why this matters is because personal brand, we see that a personal brand has, if there are issues with it, if someone makes a misstep, literally, it can impact those who are connected to them in the bottom line. And so we saw that in September, this September, we saw that after Charlie Kirk's assassination, that Jimmy Kimmel went live and he made comments. Now, Jimmy Kimmel's brand is his brand. It's his personal brand. We know what we're going to get with Jimmy Kimmel if you are familiar with him. But in a heightened situation as a recent death, then people's emotions were high and they immediately began to want to boycott, cancel him, right? Cancel culture, get rid of him. And so the pressure now is on ABC, is the pressure is on Disney. The pressure now is being put on by the public, but also by affiliate companies that help them get money. So the people who they're in contract with, the people who they're in business with that give them money are now putting pressure on them to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel's show. Now, here is what you have to understand is that according to AP News in 2022, Jimmy Kimmel actually renewed his contract for 3 years. They extended the contract. 2022, 3 years. That sounds about 2025. The contract is set to expire this renewal period in May of 2026. So the people that you work with, their personal brand, you have to know if it's an asset or liability to your business. Because with Jimmy Kimmel, when he made those comments, in order to boycott, what they started to do was they started to cancel their Hulu subscriptions. Everything that was connected to their business, they started canceling subscriptions. That means money is now being lost. And the volume of that loss means money is coming out. Now, for you, you may be a small business. You may not have the large enough capital or enough assets in other revenue streams to handle a loss of revenue at that level. So people were canceling. And then just think about how your business is set up. Is your business set up to even allow and permit for, if you have, you're growing your business for that load of people leaving your business? And are your policies in place, your contracts, your refund policies? All of this matters, all because of a personal brand. Jimmy Kimmel, he said something that now had impact on business. But they suspended his show. They did not fire him. They did not cancel the show. They suspended the show. Now, we don't know the details of that contract. We don't know if there were penalties in there for canceling the show. But we see now he's back on air, and they made it a strategic business move to do so. And so you want to ask, is their personal brand an asset or liability to your business? And the answer is not always clear cut. Now, the other question, because we're talking about our contracts, but we're also talking about personal brand protection. And that is, do you have brand protection built in for your personal brand? Can they terminate the contract at will, or do they have to terminate for cause? That there are specific reasons that they can end this contract. And if it's not one of those, they can't get out. Is there a penalty for early cancellation and termination? We're not talking about you putting in protection for them. We're talking about you putting protections for yourself, your personal brand, so that when you're doing business, if someone doesn't like what you're doing in your personal brand, they just can't end your contract. Do you have protection built in? See, We don't know if there was an early termination fee for Jimmy Kimmel's contract because he renewed for 3 years. So they had an option to keep him on. They weren't locked in for indefinitely. They said, look, this contract will be for this term. You can do that. You can limit how long the contract is and then have the option to extend it for another period of time. And so, because that period of time is there, I believe that they could not cancel him because of what was in the contract. But we'll see the evidence of that in May 2026 because we don't know if they've already renewed, been in contract negotiations and renewed him for another term, or if it was up for negotiation. And so you want to build in protections. Termination for cause can work in your favor or it can backfire depending on how it's written. But termination for cause means you cannot terminate the contract unless these causes exist. Without these causes, terminating a contract is a breach of contract. You can also have in your contract, and you want to check and see if there are any penalties for them canceling the contract early. This is an early termination fee. If you cancel before the time is up, you have to pay a fee. This doesn't work for every business. This doesn't work for every contract, but you can have something built in that protects you. Now, we're not talking about you paying a fee to terminate with them. We're talking about them paying a fee to terminate with you. So that if they don't like something you posted online, they just can't terminate the contract and move on. There's a contract in place. And so protecting your personal brand goes beyond just the contract. You want to be aware of your social media behaviors. Who are you engaging with personally or under your business brand? What post are you liking? Are you creating an association with a business that literally their brand has liability attached to it by association? You don't want to be guilty by association with a brand that cannot last, but you also want to play the long game. So just because something bad happened, you have to weigh the value. For example, if you're in business with someone, you have a contract with them, there's a partnership with them, and maybe they have a bad press moment. Maybe there is a personal brand issue that's now impacting the business and it's impacting the bottom line. But playing the long game means you have to be aware of who they're associated with and the power and influence that comes with their brand. Maybe you didn't recognize, but before Jimmy Kimmel returned to the air, again, they suspended, they didn't cancel or terminate his contract. They didn't bow to the public pressure. You had other artists like Kerry Washington standing up, her personal brand now on the forefront to support Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know about you, but she had a show called, she acted in called Scandal, Olivia Pope. And so you have to weigh the consequences of getting rid of a contract with someone because of a personal brand issue, even if it's impacting your bottom line. You have to play the long game because they brought him back and the ratings were in the millions, the millions. And they also use that moment to also deal with where the money was leaking and how to return to their Hulu subscriptions, how to reactivate their accounts. And so personal brand protection, play the long game. You want to know is their brand, if their brand is a asset or a liability as well as yours. Now, here's something that you may not have considered when you're in your contracts is do you have protections for your likeness, your image, and your name? That is a part of your brand. Are you protecting your image rights? Are you protecting your name? Because when people see your name, there's a reputation. When people see your face, if you're building the value of the asset of your brand, of you as your personal brand, then that has to be protected. And you do that in a contract. And so if you're working with someone, you want to make sure that after the contract ends, they cannot continue to use your name and your image to promote their business and services. Or if you are using it as an opportunity to still get free advertising, then you want to put parameters. Again, when can you stop it? All of that is listed in the contract. This makes sure that, again, if they have a bad moment, if something happens, they can cut ties. When the former CEO and the chief people officer of Astrometer, when they got caught in that adultery at the Coldplay concert, Astrometer cut ties with them. They removed them from the website. They scrubbed all past press releases. They did a scrub. They did not want any association to bring the business down. And so, but it could have happened in the reverse where they kept using, after a certain amount of time. Let's say that all of this gets swept under the rug, and then he goes on and do something amazing. They could try to come back and say, well, this was our former CEO, because sometimes people have a short memory and they can try to leverage your success later on, although you had a bad moment. And so you want to put parameters and how they can use your likeness, your image. You want to make sure that you're not giving them rights in perpetuity, meaning forever. Check the language of the contracts to protect your personal brand, because you don't want someone misusing your image, your name, to promote themselves. And even if it wasn't a bad press moment, you still don't want someone to have the rights forever to use your name and your likeness. But on the flip side, the reverse, there are some reasons why you would want that for your personal brand protection, especially if you plan on using their image rights for your testimonials and reviews. But we're talking about personal brand protection, especially in business. You don't want it to come back and fall back on you. Now, another way that your personal brand protection plays in and you want to be aware of is tortious interference. This is a place in business law where people literally can get sued for interfering in your business contracts. So, in your personal brand, maybe you're an advocate, maybe you stand up for certain causes, but you don't want to jump on a bandwagon and start boycotting someone or telling other people to do something without thinking about the consequences to your personal brand, but also your business. Because if you're aware that that person had a contract with them, and then you try to intimidate them or use financial means to get them to terminate that contract, you could be sued for tortious interference. And if you're sued for tortious interference, lawsuits are public records. That means now there is a public record that you have been interfering in other people's business arrangements. And that may come back to bite you in the butt later on, because now people are saying, well, I don't want to work with this person. Now, you may be thinking, I would never do that. But think about causes you may feel very strongly about. Causes such as abortion, causes such as, let's be honest, the unregulated use of chemicals in food or dyes and things we use in America, and how that may have health consequences. You're boycotting. This is your personal brand, and you're saying don't do that. And yet now, if you are aware that this person had a contract such as a distribution contract with this company and you interfered, now you can possibly get sued. But not just that, now there's a public record. And if you don't have protections built into your contract, somebody can then say, hold on, you're being sued for this. Hold on, you did this behavior. I know it seemed like a good cause, but now there's a record and I don't want to be associated with you. So now you don't have protections built in because of your personal brand. They can terminate the contract and hit your bottom line. So again, you want to build in protections to protect your personal brand in business. You do that by having a termination for cause. You can't just quit the contract. You have to meet these causes or it's a breach of contract. But it's not for every contract. You have to know when to use it. You also protect your personal brand by using a early termination fee. So this will help you recover some of the costs, but also put in a caution. I'm not sure that you want to terminate early, to make them weigh the risk and the cost of canceling just because of your personal brand. Another way that you protect your personal brand with contracts is making sure that you secure your image rights and put restrictions on how other people can use them, so that you're not associated with someone that can really hurt your brand and hurt your business. You also want to make sure that you're protected against the fallout of another brand. So, someone else you're associated with them, they're going through, you don't want to pay the cost for their personal brand having a bad moment. And now you're hitting the bottom line. We talked about Jimmy Kimmel, we talked about ABC, we talked about how people were just getting their subscriptions canceling, but we also talked about waiting. Don't just terminate because the cost and the risk of doing that and his contract. So, if you're just tuning in, go back and watch and listen to the beginning of the Jimmy Kimmel, because his contract didn't get canceled, but it's set to end in May 2026. And so we don't know what's in that contract that may have weighed the cost. But also, you want to think about who's connected to the brand, because Kerry Washington is connected to ABC. Kerry Washington is connected in her personal brand, connected with his personal brand. Can have influence in contract negotiations. It can have influence on whether someone terminates your contract. And then we just talked about being careful of what you do in your personal brand, because you can be sued for tortious interference. Now, again, your personal brand is not just your reputation and the image you portray. It's also how you live your life, because at any moment someone can record a video, you go viral. We see Kathy's all the time, and public pressure could fire them, and people fire them because the influence, the pressure of the public on that business, the boycott. An employee doesn't have the same value as someone bringing in lots of money, and so that cost risk, we can cut them off and replace them. So you also want to think about the position, but also play the long game. Is there a way to reduce public pressure, also not to breach your contract, protect your personal brand, and protect the longevity of your business brand as well? So, thank you so much for attending the Lunch and Learn. This is quarter 3, where we talk about personal brand protection. This will be, if you're here live, this will be on our YouTube channel at the 180 Contracts. And if you're interested in contracts templates, you need a contract that's the next best thing to hiring a lawyer that actually protects you, then you can go over to 180contracts.com to learn more. If you signed up to be here for the Lunch and Learn, you're signed up for the rest of the year. You don't have to sign up until next year for next year's Lunch and Learns. But if you're not registered, then you can go to 180contracts.com to register for the next Lunch and Learn in quarter 4. We're getting ready for our Q&A session. So if you're here, just hold on in just a moment, and we're going to transition over. Again, this was quarter 3 Lunch and Learn on personal brand protection.